There are 13 habits that make people rich, and you need to force yourself to build them, because when you build better habits, you build a better destiny. A researcher named Thomas Corley spent 5 years studying the daily lives of self-made wealthy people and people who were struggling financially. And his conclusion was simple but brutal. Whether someone succeeds in life is often hidden inside their everyday habits. Not their wishes, not their talent, not their excuses, their habits. That idea matters because most people think wealth is created by one big break, one lucky investment, one perfect career move. But that's not how it usually works. Wealth is usually built quietly, in routines so boring that most people ignore them. And that's exactly why they're powerful. The things people repeat every day eventually become the life they live every year. So if you want better results, don't just chase money. Build the habits that attract it. These are 13 rich habits worth forcing yourself to develop. The first habit is reading regularly, not scrolling, not skimming headlines, not consuming endless noise. Reading. Lin Yutang once said that reading opens the mind and sharpens the heart. And whether or not you know that, quote, you already know the truth behind it. The more quality ideas you expose yourself to, the better your thinking becomes. You stop reacting to life at the surface level. You start seeing patterns. You start understanding people. You start making better decisions before problems get expensive. Biographies widen your sense of possibility. History humbles you and teaches you what human nature always does under pressure. Good business books show you how money moves, how incentives work, how bad decisions compound. Even practical books on health, communication, and productivity can save you years of trial and error. Most people say they want wisdom, but they spend their free time consuming junk. If you read for even 30 minutes a day, that's more than 180 hours a year. Think about what that does over 5 years, over 10. One person spends a decade feeding their mind. Another spends a decade feeding distraction. They will not end up in the same place. And here's the deeper point. Rich people don't just earn differently. They think differently. Reading is one of the cheapest ways to upgrade the quality of your thinking. The second habit is exercising consistently. This sounds like health advice, but it's really wealth advice too. A weak body makes everything harder. Harder to focus. Harder to recover from stress. Harder to lead. Harder to stay disciplined. Harder to think clearly when life hits you from 3 directions at once. People love separating physical performance from financial performance as if they have nothing to do with each other. That's nonsense. Energy is an economic advantage. Stamina is an economic advantage. Mental clarity is an economic advantage. If you feel terrible, you make worse decisions. And bad decisions are expensive. Even something as simple as a daily 30-minute walk can change your life more than people realize. It lowers stress, improves mood, helps regulate appetite, supports better sleep, clears mental clutter, and better sleep alone can change your patience, discipline, and emotional control. A lot of people keep promising themselves they'll work out once life calms down. But life usually doesn't calm down. You have to build strength while life is chaotic. That's the point. Every drop of sweat is an investment in your future earning power. It strengthens your body, sharpens your mind, and gives you a sense of self-respect that spills into every other area of life. People who exercise consistently don't just look different. They carry themselves differently. They tolerate discomfort better. And that matters in money, work, and life. The third habit is getting close to successful people and learning how they think. This doesn't mean using people. It means putting yourself in environments where your standards get raised. When Steve Jobs was still a teenager, he cold called Bill Hewlett, the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard, asking for parts for a school project. That one move didn't just get him parts. It got him access. It got him proximity. It got him a chance to learn inside a serious company. That kind of boldness changes lives. Most people stay surrounded by the same small patterns of thinking, the same excuses, the same emotional habits, the same fears disguised as realism. And then they wonder why their results stay average. Success has a culture. So does failure. If the people around you constantly complain, spend recklessly, avoid responsibility, and mock ambition, that will shape you whether you admit it or not. On the other hand, when you spend time around builders, disciplined professionals, thoughtful investors, and people who take ownership, you absorb their pace, their standards, and their logic. You don't need a billionaire best friend. You just need more exposure to people who are already living at a higher level than you are. That might mean attending events, joining the right communities, asking better questions, listening more carefully, and being willing to feel inexperienced for a while. Because if you're always the smartest and most driven person in every room, you're probably in rooms that are too small for your future. The fourth habit is pursuing a clear goal. This is where most people fall apart. A huge percentage of people drift through life with vague desires but no defined target. They want to make more money, get in shape, start a business, become more independent, or create something meaningful. But more, better, and someday are not goals. They're fog. And fog makes people slow, distracted, and easy to discourage. The people who move fastest usually know what they're moving toward. Not every detail, not a perfect 10-year blueprint, but a direction, a real one. If you want to become a writer, write every day, even if it's just a few hundred words. If you want to become a YouTuber, learn editing, storytelling, titles, thumbnails, and audience psychology. If you want to become a photographer, stop waiting for the perfect camera and start shooting with what you have. Goals only become real when they are translated into repeated action. A clear goal does something powerful. It filters your life. It tells you what matters and what doesn't. It tells you what to say yes to and what to ignore. It gives structure to your effort. Without a goal, the world will happily assign you one. You'll end up building someone else's dream, financing someone else's priorities, and wasting years on things that were never truly yours. If you don't choose your direction, distraction will choose it for you. The fifth habit is maintaining a positive attitude. Now let's be clear. This is not about fake optimism, toxic positivity, or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. This is about refusing to let a negative mindset sabotage your own effort. In studies of sales teams, researchers have repeatedly found that people with a more optimistic outlook often outperform equally talented peers who are cynical or defeatist. Why? Because attitude affects persistence. It affects resilience. It affects whether you try again after rejection number 8, after the layoff, after the failed launch, after the month where nothing seems to work. Negative people think they're being realistic. Sometimes they're just rehearsing defeat. If you go into every challenge expecting frustration, betrayal, unfairness, and disappointment, your energy changes, your voice changes, your body language changes, your willingness to act changes. You start withdrawing before the world even pushes you back. Optimism, when it's disciplined, creates momentum. It helps you stay engaged long enough for effort to compound. And that matters because many breakthroughs happen after most people would have emotionally quit. A positive attitude does not guarantee success, but a chronically negative attitude makes success much less likely. Complaining weakens you. Taking action strengthens you. If something is hard, be honest about it. But don't make hopelessness your personality. The sixth habit is waking up early and protecting your mornings. This isn't really about the clock. It's about control. A lot of high performers love the early morning because it gives them uninterrupted time before the world starts making demands. Before the emails, before the meetings, before the texts, before the noise. Morning is often the only part of the day that still belongs to you. And if you can control the first hour of your day, you have a much better chance of controlling the direction of your life. Think about what happens to most people. They wake up late, grab their phone immediately, rush into the day emotionally scattered, and spend the rest of the day reacting. They don't start the day. The day starts them. Now compare that with someone who wakes up an hour earlier and uses that time intentionally. They walk, they read, they plan, they journal, they work on a side business, they study a skill, they think. That extra hour sounds small until you do the math. 1 hour a day becomes hundreds of hours a year. That's enough time to change your body, your knowledge, your income, or your career. Early rising won't magically make you wealthy. But winning the morning often creates the space where wealth-building habits can actually happen. The seventh habit is building multiple sources of income. This one is no longer optional in the modern economy. For decades, people were told that if they got one stable job, worked hard, and stayed loyal, they'd be safe. That story has broken down. We've all watched massive companies cut thousands of workers with almost no warning. People with strong resumes, good performance, and years of service still got the email. Still lost the paycheck. Still had to figure it out fast. That's why depending on one source of income is dangerous. It's not security. It's concentration risk. If all your financial stability depends on one employer, one client, one platform, or one paycheck, you are more vulnerable than you think. When the economy shifts, when technology changes, when your industry gets squeezed, or when leadership decides to restructure, your entire life can take the hit. Multiple income streams don't have to mean some flashy entrepreneur fantasy. It can be practical: a side business, freelance work, dividend income, a high-yield savings account, a small rental, a digital product, consulting, a skill you monetize on weekends, long-term investing in broad index funds. The point is not to become overwhelmed. The point is to create options. When one stream weakens, another can carry part of the load. Wealthy people build financial shock absorbers. Poor thinking assumes tomorrow's paycheck is guaranteed. It isn't. The eighth habit is having a mentor. Even Warren Buffett had one. Buffett often said that Benjamin Graham shaped the way he thinks about investing and risk. Graham didn't just give Buffett information. He gave him a framework, a way to interpret markets, value, patience, and decision-making. That's what a mentor really does. A mentor compresses time. They help you avoid mistakes you are about to learn the expensive way. They help you see what you're missing. They give language to problems you can feel but haven't yet defined. And sometimes one good sentence from the right person can save you 5 years of drifting. A lot of people delay growth because they keep trying to figure everything out alone. They think independence means isolation. It doesn't. Independence means learning fast enough that you don't remain stuck. And one of the fastest ways to do that is to learn from someone who has already gone where you want to go. Your mentor does not have to be famous. It can be a boss with integrity, a coach, a professor, a seasoned entrepreneur, a financially wise family friend, or even an author whose work reshapes your thinking. But you need guiding voices in your life. Because when you're confused, your own mind is often a terrible place to get unstuck. You need perspective from outside your current blind spots. The ninth habit is not following the crowd. There's a simple story that explains this perfectly. In one town, a businessman opens a gas station, and it does well. Another person sees the traffic and opens a diner nearby. A third opens a grocery store. Soon the area becomes a thriving commercial center because each business complements the others. In another town, a businessman opens a gas station, and it does well. So the next person opens another gas station, then another, then another. Everyone is chasing the same visible success, and eventually nobody makes much money. That's what happens when people confuse imitation with strategy. In wealth building, crowd behavior is dangerous. People chase hot stocks after the price already exploded. They copy business models without understanding the economics. They buy things to look successful instead of doing the things that create success. They make decisions based on what gets attention, not what creates long-term value. The hard part of building wealth is not just working hard. It's having the courage to think independently while everyone else is getting emotionally pulled into the same direction. Robert Kiyosaki wrote that one of the hardest things in building wealth is sticking with your own choices instead of blindly following the herd. That's true, because crowds offer emotional comfort, but emotional comfort is often expensive. Find your lane. Go deeper than other people are willing to go. Stay with it long enough to become difficult to replace. The 10th habit is being polite and treating people well. This sounds small. It isn't. There's a story about a woman who worked in a meat processing plant. One day, she entered a cold storage room for a routine check, and the door accidentally shut behind her. She screamed and pounded on the door, but nobody heard her. Hours later, just as she was close to dying, a security guard opened the door and saved her. Afterward, she asked him why he came. It wasn't part of his job to check that room. He said, "I've worked here for decades. Hundreds of people walk past me every day. You're one of the only ones who says good morning to me and says goodbye at the end of the shift. That day, I heard your hello in the morning, but I never heard your goodbye. So I knew something was wrong. That's an unforgettable lesson." A greeting, a thank you, basic respect. These things look small to arrogant people, but they reveal character. And character shapes relationships. Relationships shape opportunities. Opportunities shape wealth. The world remembers how you make people feel. Not every time, not immediately, but over time, absolutely. Good manners are not weakness. They are social intelligence. People open doors for those who make them feel seen. The 11th habit is helping other people succeed. This sounds selfless, but it's also strategic in the best sense. There's a well-known story about the land deal that helped establish the United Nations headquarters in New York. The Rockefeller family played a major role in making that possible. On the surface, some people saw generosity that looked financially irrational. But the bigger thinkers understood something else. When you help create value at scale, value often flows back to you in ways that are not obvious at first. This is one of the deepest wealth principles most people miss. A selfish person asks, "How do I get more?" A smart person asks, "How do I become useful to more people?" Those are not the same question. When you help others win, you build trust, influence, goodwill, and networks. You become memorable. You become referable. You become someone people want to work with, buy from, and recommend. And in business, trust is an asset. In careers, trust is an asset. In investing, trust is an asset. In life, trust is an asset. That doesn't mean being naive. It doesn't mean letting people exploit you. It means understanding that contribution and wealth are deeply connected. The people who solve real problems for other people tend to get rewarded. The bridges you build for others often become roads back to your own future. The 12th habit is spending 5 to 30 minutes a day thinking. Real thinking. Not worrying. Not doom scrolling. Not mentally replaying arguments. Thinking. There's a story from a Japanese research team that observed ant colonies. Most of the ants were constantly busy, gathering food and doing visible work. But a smaller group seemed lazy, wandering around and not doing much. Then, when the food source was cut off, the busy ants panicked, while the so-called lazy ants helped lead the colony toward new food. Why? Because they weren't lazy. They were scouting, observing, processing. That's the problem with low-level hustle culture. It glorifies motion, but ignores direction. A lot of people are busy every hour and still making no real progress. They confuse exhaustion with effectiveness. Thinking time is where strategy gets built. It's where you notice patterns in your spending. It's where you ask whether your job still has upside. It's where you realize your lifestyle is draining your freedom. It's where you finally admit that the thing you keep calling a plan is actually just avoidance. If you never step back, you'll keep solving the wrong problems efficiently. 5 quiet minutes can save you from 5 loud years. The 13th habit is seeking feedback. Elon Musk once said one of the biggest challenges in life is building a corrective feedback loop. In plain English, that means having a way to find out quickly when you're wrong, off track, or underperforming. Most people hate feedback because feedback threatens ego. It exposes gaps. It ruins the story we tell ourselves about how well we're doing. But if you can learn to treat criticism as data instead of a personal attack, your growth speed changes dramatically. Feedback helps you adjust before a small weakness becomes a major failure. It helps you fix your product before customers disappear. It helps you improve your communication before relationships break down. It helps you sharpen your work before the market punishes mediocrity. The people who grow the fastest are rarely the people who defend themselves the most. They're the people who can hear something uncomfortable, sort through it honestly, and use it. That doesn't mean every opinion matters. Some feedback is noise. Some criticism comes from people who have no idea what they're talking about. But useful feedback is one of the fastest forms of leverage in life because it shows you what you cannot easily see by yourself. If you only listen to praise, you will stay blind in the areas that matter most. And that brings us back to the big truth running through all 13 habits. Your habits are your future in disguise. If you read, you think better. If you exercise, you perform better. If you learn from capable people, your standards rise. If you pursue clear goals, your effort stops leaking. If you protect your mindset, you stay in the fight longer. If you own your mornings, you reclaim time. If you build multiple income streams, you reduce financial fragility. If you find mentors, you compress time. If you think independently, you avoid the herd. If you treat people well, relationships start compounding. If you help others win, value circles back. If you think deeply, you stop wasting motion. If you seek feedback, you improve faster. None of these habits are flashy. That's why most people don't respect them enough. People want dramatic shortcuts. They want a stock tip, a secret hustle, a trick, a hack, a perfect moment. But the truth is much less exciting and much more useful. Wealth usually grows out of disciplined patterns repeated long enough to become identity. So don't ask whether these habits feel convenient. Ask whether your current habits are creating the life you actually want. Because in the end, luck may open a door, but habits decide whether you can stay in the room. Build rich habits, and what looks like luck to everybody else will start looking a lot more like the life you trained yourself to deserve.